Welcome back, everyone. In the previous videos, we discussed how to decide what to design, how to find out what people need, sample life cycle model, four basic activities of interaction design, and etc. Now, we will discuss how to generate alternative designs. A common human tendency is to stick with something that works, while recognizing that a better solution may exist. It is easy to accept the one that works as being good enough. Settling for a solution that is good enough may be undesirable because better alternatives may never be considered. And considering alternative solutions is a crucial step in the process of design. But where do these alternative ideas come from? Okay, so we have a tendency to stick with the processes or habits that we do with our work or with the things that we're trying to do. So considering other solutions or other alternative is actually what will resolve our issue because often we are not aware on the available options. There is often better ways or better interface that we can use to resolve our issue. So where do these alternative ideas come from? One answer to this question is that they come from the individual's designer flair and creativity. Although it is certainly true that some people are able to produce wonderfully inspired designs, while others struggle to come up with any ideas at all, very little in this world is completely new, like what I've said before. Referring to the sources of inspiration is an acknowledged technique for generating ideas in design. Eckert and Stacy and Pau show that people presented with creative examples generated more creative ideas than those presented with a random set of ideas. Innovation often arises through cross-fertilization of ideas from different perspectives, individuals, and contexts. The evolution of an existing product through use and observation or straightforward copying of other similar products. So when people are presented with creative examples or an example, other ideas, they are more creative. The innovation are actually arises from those cross fertilizations of ideas that you get from other uh, people with different perspectives and contexts. Cross fertilization results from presenting ideas and discussing them with a multidisciplinary team, with other designers, and through workshops with a wide range of stakeholders. Initially, the cell phone was designed to simply make and receive phone calls and texts, but now the smartphone supports a myriad of interactions, for example, taking photographs, streaming news and movies, paying for goods, learning a language, playing music and games, capturing your exercise routine, and many more. So it used to be for calls and text only, but it added a lot of features because of cross fertilization. Like phone is not really new. It just integrate all in one device, in one small device. For instance, browsing a collection of designs will inspire designers to consider alternative perspectives and hence alternative solutions. As Roger Shank in 1982 put it, Many years ago, an expert is someone who gets reminded of just the right prior experience to help him in his processing his current experiences. And while those experiences may be the designer's own, they can equally well be of others. So basically, he is saying that the expert are the one that have just enough prior experience to help in processing his current experience. Scamper is one technique that is particularly useful for an existing product or idea. It invites designer to try each of the following to see what impact it has. Swap one element of the product with something else. Combine, adapt, or modify aspects of the product. Put the product of to different uses. Eliminate existing elements and rearrange or reverse elements. So, Scamper is a tool that allows you to combine, adapt, or modify aspects of the product, put the product to different uses, eliminate existing elements, and rearrange or reverse elements. In that way, you are allowed to see different combination of things. But the key here is the time, because there's a time constraints. You can always try different combination. You have to prioritize and do that intelligently. In interaction or do it with the right algorithm. In interaction design, this might involve changing assumptions about the product's context of use, generating a viable product, or considering the product from the viewpoint of a 5-year-old. Creativity triggers are a set of lightweight prompts Boumai at 2016 to inspire novel requirements. These are derived from practitioner experience and are captured in a standard form. Title, short description, guidelines, an example, and a visual. So here, an example for entertaining, it extends your solution with a feature that makes it fun or captivating. Durable, find a feature that makes your solution durable, long lasting. So guideline one, add an unusual feature that no competitor's solution has. Guideline two, find a feature that your solution that makes it witty and engaging to use. Google regularly provides diverting content on a regular basis to its users under the form of interactive doodles focusing on a specific theme. So Google actually redirect their users from time to time to focus on specific theme. Here's an example of that. So for entertainment, durable, guideline one, think about your solution as a permanent, endless solution. Add a component to your solution that makes robust solid. A rechargeable battery can be used and recharged more than 100 times with the same power quality, making it durable product. So here's an example to creativity triggers. Now, there is a wide range of creativity cards available to help teams generate alternative designs. To start your exploration of different sets available, go to methodkit.com/research dash method dash cards. There are numerous ideation techniques. To learn more about this, start at this. The process of inspiration and creativity can be enhanced by promoting a designer's own experience and studying others' design ideas and suggestions. Deliberately seeking out sources of inspiration is a valuable step in any design process. These sources may be very close to the intended new product, such as competitors' products, They may be earlier versions of similar systems, or they may be from a completely different domain. So it's the same principle, reflecting to your own experience and studying others. So you also seek sources of inspirations. It may be close to the intended new product, such as competitors' product. They may be earlier versions of similar system, or they may be from a completely different domain. Under some circumstances, the scope to consider alternative design is limited. Design is a process of balancing constraints and trading off one set of requirements with another. And the constraints may mean that there are few viable alternatives available. For example, when designing an app to run an Android smartphone, designers are encouraged to conform to Android's look and feel with the intention of making new apps consistent with the existing brand. Basically, there sometimes the design is limited to the constraint available physically, such as the Android Studio. You are required to work along those. When producing an upgrade to an existing system, keeping familiar elements of it to retain the same user experience may be prioritized. Although there is a design choice to make as to whether a completely new conceptual model, for example, may result in a better product. So, when trying to upgrade an existing system, there is also a choice between alternatives of keeping the old system and using a completely new model. So again, it depends on your frameworks, it depends on your goals, the data that you collected, and the constraints. It depends on a lot of different factors for the lack of better word. However, travel blogs contain useful and practical insights, and websites that compare alternative options are informative. We were also influenced by some favorite apps such as the United Kingdom National Rail Smartphone app for its real-time updating and by the Airbnb website for its mixture of simplicity and detail. Perhaps you were inspired by something that you use regularly, like a particularly enjoyable game or a device that you like to use. I'm not sure how innovative our ideas were, but the main goal was for the application to tailor its advice for the user's preferences. Basically, when we were creating a travel blog app, we were inspired by the popular website. And then we were also influenced by our favorite app and then tailored that app to our needs. So we got a lot of features from popular website and then used the favorite feature or feature that we like to our own that applies to our framework. In recent years, the Creative Commons community, Creative Commons orgs, has suggested more flexible licensing arrangements that allow others to reuse and extend a piece of created work, thereby supporting collaboration. In the open source software development movement, for example, software code is freely distributed and can be modified, incorporated into other software, and redistributed under the same open source conditions. So another way to generate ideas and to see it out there how it will be used in different ways by using open source, such as Facebook Meta and DeepSeek, where they open their source code. So under some terms and condition, they were able to change the code and generate as much idea on how the code or AI can be used. How to choose among alternative designs? Broadly speaking, though, the decisions, sorry, let's discuss this. So, if you have some particular game or a device that you like to use and a feature from that you want to apply in your app, that could be an innovation as well that you could use to your system. Maybe from completely different industry that you would like to apply to your app. How to choose among alternatives? Broadly speaking, though, the decisions fall into two categories. Those that are about externally visible and measurable features, and those that are about characteristics internal to the system that cannot be observed or measured without dissecting it. So to choose among alternatives, it falls into categories: externally visible and measurable features, and those that are about internal and about characteristics of the system that is hard to measure. For example, in a printer, externally visible and measurable factors include the physical size of the machine, the speed and quality of copying, the different sizes of paper it can use, and so on. Underlying each of these factors are other considerations that cannot be observed or studied without dissecting the machine. For example, the choice of material used in a printer may depend on its friction rating and how much it deforms under certain conditions. So just like an Android Studio or a system that already set outside of your control, the silicon material that is used to create the printer is also not under your control. So you're limited to a certain capabilities. That's why it's important for you to know and understand what is the available options. One answer to this question is that choosing between alternative design is informed by letting stakeholders interact with them and by discussing their experiences, preferences, and suggestions for improvements. To do this, the design must be in a form that can be evaluated by users, not in technical jargon or notation that seems impenetrable to them. Documentation is one way to communicate a design. For example, a diagram showing the product's component or a description of how it works. So one way to do this is to create a diagram or a basic description that allows the basic user to understand this, and then let them interact with the product. So based on what you expect and what they understand to be the product is, what is the result? A static description cannot easily capture the dynamic of behavior, and for an interactive product, this need to be communicated so that users can see what it will be like to operate it. So, upon simplifying, again, this is also related to the act of teaching or writing things. The act of writing things allows you to understand the product better. The act of teaching it allows you to understand the product better. So when you create, for most products, it's complex. So you cannot just put a simple explanation or a brief description for it. That's why it's important because since it's not simple to use most of the time, you have to break it down in simple sentences. for the user. When a deployable version of the product is available, another way to choose between alternative design is to deploy two different variations and collect data from actual use that is then used to inform the choice. This is called A/B testing and is often used for alternative website designs. So if the product is deployable, that is have its own application because then it allows you to test the product cheaply. You don't, since it's already there, like a software, you don't need to create a physical building if you're an architect designing a building just to test if your ideas will work. If it's a software, you can test it cheaply. Then you would check the design by actually deploying the system and see it actually in reality. How would the customer feel about your product? So that's called A/B testing when a two deployable product or prototype is created. Another basis on how to choose between alternatives is quality, but that requires a clear understanding of what quality means, and people's view of quality vary. Everyone has a notion of the level of quality that is expected, wanted, or needed from a product, whether this is expressed formally, informally, or not at all. It exists and informs the choice between alternatives. Another basis for choosing alternatives is the quality. But remember, quality is different for different people, and it is expressed formally and informally or not at all. And it most of the time inform the choice between alternatives. For example, one smartphone design might make it easy to access popular music channel but restrict sound settings, while another requires more complicated key sequences to access the channel but has a range of sophisticated sound settings. One user's view of quality may lean toward ease of use, while another may lean toward sophisticated sound settings. Most projects involve a range of different stakeholders, groups, and it is common for each of them to define quality differently and to have different acceptable limits. For example, although stakeholders may agree on goals for a video game, such as characters will be appealing or graphics will be realistic, the meaning of these statements can vary between different groups. Disputes will arise if later in development it transpires that realistic to stakeholder group of teenage players is different from realistic to a group of parent stakeholders or to developers. Capturing these different views clearly clarifies expectations, provide a benchmark against which product and prototypes can be compared and form a basis on which to choose among alternatives. So sometimes the prototype or the deployable product or alternatives is not could not be compared because different people defines appealing and graphics will be realistic differently. So the key is to put this in writing, explain this what that means clearly so that you could manage the expectation, just like on expectation management that a product owner do, as well as taking ownership of the product. The process of writing down formal, verifiable, and hence measurable usability criteria is key characteristic of an approach to interaction design called usability engineering. So usability engineering is about being clear or writing down. It's about a process, a framework that you're trying to create to measure criteria, usability criteria, and then improve that as your project it iterates. This field has emerged over many years and with various proponents in 1998 and 1993. Most recently, it is often applied in health informatics. For example, C. Kushniruk in 2015. Usability engineering involves specifying quantifiable measures of product performance, documenting them in a usability specification, and assessing the product against them. A/B testing is most commonly used for comparing different versions of web pages or apps, but the principles and mathematics behind it came about in 1920s. In an interaction design context, different versions of web pages or apps are related for use by users performing their everyday tasks. Typically, users are unaware that they are contributing to an evaluation. This is a powerful way to involve users in choosing between alternatives because a huge number of users can be involved and the situations are authentic. Another way to choose between alternatives is via versioning. So it is commonly used in application and web pages where the actual users are actually test the product and they measure it using analytics. On the other hand, it's a simple idea. Give one set of users one version and a second set the other version and see which set scores more highly against the success criteria. Consider your products from Activity 2.1 suggests some usability criteria that could be applied to determine its quality. Use the usability goals introduced in Chapter 1: effectiveness, efficiency, safety, utility, learnability, memorability, and satisfaction. So this, the efficiency, the safety, how safe it is, learnability, how easy it is to learn, memorability, it's related to how it's easy to learn, satisfaction, how would you feel emotionally while doing it, be as specific as possible. Check the criteria by considering exactly. So this we will discuss the this uh, criterias in the next videos. But check the criteria by considering exactly what to measure and how to measure its performance. Finding measurable characteristics for the user experience criteria is harder. So the it's easy to find an internal characteristics that's hard to measure, but a measurable criteria that determines its usability for the user is actually hard. That's why there's this usability engineering, where it clarifies what people mean by being usable. How do you measure fun, motivation, or aesthetics? What is entertaining to one person may be boring to another. These kinds of criteria are subjective and so cannot be measured as objectively. Now, these are the meaning of that. Effectiveness, identifying measurable criteria for this goal is particularly difficult since it is a combination of other goals. For example, does the system support travel organization, choosing transport, routes, booking accommodation, and so on? In other words, is the product used? Efficiency, is it clear how to ask for recommendations from the product? How quickly does it identify a suitable route or destination details? Safety, how often does the data get lost or is the wrong option chosen? This may be measured, for example, as the number of times this happens per trip. Utility, how many functions offered are used for every trip? How many every other trip? And how many are not used at all? How many tasks are difficult to complete in a reasonable time because functionality is missing or the right subtasks aren't supported? Learnability. How long does it take for a novice user to be able to do a series of set tasks? For example, to book a hotel room in Paris near the meeting venue for the meeting dates, identify appropriate flights from Sydney to Wellington, or find out whether a visa is needed to go to China. Memorability, if the product isn't used for a month, how many functions can the user remember how to perform? How long does it take to remember how to perform the most frequent tasks? Satisfaction, how satisfied are users after booking a trip? How satisfied are they after going on a trip with the handheld version? This could be measured using one of the customer satisfaction scales mentioned in chapter 1, which we will discuss in the next video. So, learnability. So, a good measure is how the novice or beginner will be able to learn it. How are old people are able to learn the product because those are not as technologically savvy than young people. How many function utility that does it offer? So does it have complete function, not considering the UI, but just the function or the capabilities of the system? How many are not used? How many tasks are difficult to complete in a reasonable time because functionality is missing or the right subtasks aren't supported? So how many function is not included that must be included that makes the goal of the customer harder to accomplish? How does data get lost or how is it likely to be hacked? How to integrate interaction design activities within other lifecycle models. More recently, German Leva in 2019 highlights the ongoing issues where designer-developer communication breaks down when transitioning from design to implementation. The methods differ, but they all stress the importance of iteration, early and repeated user feedback, being able to handle emergent requirements, and striking a good balance between flexibility and structure. They also emphasize collaboration, face-to-face communication, streamlined processes to avoid unnecessary activities, and the importance of practice over processes, that is, of getting work done. So there is actually an issue with implementing design because of the communication between designer and the engineer. So basically, this talks about the importance of agile or a feedback before you do the thing. We are uncovering better ways of developing software by doing it and helping others do it. Through this work, we have come to value individuals and interactions over processes and tools. So these are agile principles. We focus on individual and the interaction of the individual over processes and tools. So the process and tools changes, but the individuals and its interaction to our system does not change. Working software over comprehensive documentation. So we focus on working software that meets the requirements for this interaction. Customer collaboration over contract negotiation. So instead of extending the contract, we focus on the customer, how it collaborates to our system. It goes back to its interaction, responding to change over following a plan. So the customer interaction to product is complex. It change depending on complex adaptive system because people are complex, the world is complex. So we cannot really just stick on one plan. We must be able to adapt and change. Extreme One Programming XP stipulates that the customer should be on site with developers. In practice, the customer role is usually taken by a team rather than by one person. And integrate based on Martin 2009, and integration is far from straightforward. in 2012. Many companies have integrated agile methods with interaction design practices to produce a better user experience and business value. So companies use this to provide more value or things that the customer needs. You focus on them and then adapting to their needs. Like, for example, if you notice that the user needs more situational and perceptual awareness about their implicit cues when conversing with you, and they don't necessarily want to explicitly tell you what they want. So the thing that you would do there is to read fiction books about them to really understand what is not being said so that they don't need to explicitly tell you. You just know them based on their body language or perception, based on their face, etc. It is a good practice to talk to people about their requirements. So rather than having weighty documentation, XP reduces documentation to a minimum, thus forcing communication and so on. So instead of having this 90 goal, you talk to the customer about what they want, and then you reduce this planning to a minimum and focus on actually talking to the customer. Find 3 to 5 potential users and talk to them about how they might use a new time, place. Oh my god, we're done. Timepiece. Write down some initial goals and suggested some usability criteria and user experience criteria. Are you really done here? Find 3 to 5 potential users and talk to them about how they might use a new timepiece. Write down some initial goals and suggest some usability criteria and user experience criteria based on the definitions in Chapter 1. Note that a more thorough exploration of the problem space and people's need would be undertaken if the timepiece were to be developed further. Look around for similar devices and seek out other sources of inspiration that you find helpful. Make a note of any findings that are interesting. Sketch some initial design for timepieces. Try to develop at least 2 distinct alternatives. Alright, so we're done, I guess. So yeah, we're done for now. We'll come back on the next video. Thank you guys. So we're done with the process of interaction. Next, we will discuss the um, hmm, yeah. So next, we will discuss the first part of this book, the principles of interaction design. Then, guys, thank you for watching. See you on the next video. Peace.